Hi there, and welcome to another success story with Dr. Sarah Zaldivar. And I say it like that because at the end, I will give you an outtake. And Dr. Sarah has an exercise physiology and nutritional degree, a master's, bachelor's in nutrition and dietetics, and basically is practicing. After 9 years in Miami, she relocated to Florida and teaches nutrition courses online, and she's got tons and tons of qualifications and experience. And we're going to talk about dance at some point. I didn't talk about that in the preamble. We'll talk about that and personal training. But hi, Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Stephen.
That's okay. Sorry, I murdered your name earlier. I'm going to ask you.
On a whole other level. You
got
to keep that in the bloopers at the end.
We'll definitely put that on the end. Now, I'm going to ask you the question I ask every guest. The first question I always ask is, why did you become carnivore?
Ooh, okay. I'm gonna give you the whole thing and tell me when to shut up if it gets way too long. Okay, so let's start with the beginnings at around my whole interest in nutrition really started when I was like maybe 12, 13, 14, and a classmate of mine told me that I was fat. It scarred me for life, and I wasn't really that. I mean, it was just a little bit chubbier than the other, the other girls were skinny and I wasn't, and started doing the binge restrict cycles and all that kind of stuff, which led to binge eating disorders and really like a lot of weight gain, depression, anxiety, all that stuff. So that's when I decided I'm going to become a nutritionist. And I started doing my bachelor's in nutrition and dietetics, and I believe the calories in, calories out approach, and always kind of like blaming myself, like it's not working because I'm not disciplined enough, etc. Right? And never really realizing that the fact that I'm trying to eat all the carbs and no fat was like the worst thing that I could be doing. At the same time, around 18 or 19, I started having a lot of acne, it wasn't like cystic or anything. It was like a comedone, which is like flesh colored, but it's like under the skin, you can see a lot of bumps all over. And I was like, what is that? And then I realized that's acne. And I started going to every single dermatologist. I tried everything. I did Accutane twice. I did birth control pills, antibiotics. I did spironolactone, all the topicals, everything. Nothing worked. And that's when I started losing faith in the mainstream medical system. And that's when I started reading I read the book by Dr. Lauren Corday, the grandfather of modern paleo movement, and it was about the acne cure. It was all about paleo diets, and I tried it and it worked. And so that was the first time that I realized that diet has a much more important role than I was taught. And also the first time that I realized that what I'm being taught is probably not the best, but I don't think I made the link between diet and weight loss. I only focus on like losing my confidence in like doctors and like diet and acne. It's weird. I don't know why I didn't put one and one together. It's very strange. So that was how I started doing paleo. And then I moved to Miami and by myself to do my doctorate. And I didn't even have a car. It was like a lot of survival mode that first few months. So I kind of stopped the paleo diet for a while. And then even the doctors, in Miami put me on spironolactone, all that kind of stuff. Eventually, as I started to have a slightly more comfortable life, I met my hubby here. He's an American, and I had my car, and I just at least I had someone, because when I came to Miami I had nobody, like not a friend, not a relative, like zero. So it was pretty crazy. So after I kind of like stopped living in survival mode, and I started paying attention to my diet and lifestyle and all that kind of stuff a little bit better, I was also struggling with anxiety at the same time, because I was like teaching for the first time and I didn't have as much public speaking practice before. And here I am, a nutrition professor at the University of Miami. I remember like walking to the classroom and like my heart about to like beat out of my chest. It was awful. And it was just inexperience. I don't think that was something that was diet related. I think that because now it's like, I know that like it never happens anymore, and it only stopped happening after like years of experience, so that's That's what it was. But that did at the time push me to look into diets for anxiety, and I came across keto. So now it was like paleo, then keto, and keto helped me. And when I started doing keto, I remember like after 7 days, you can feel like a light switch flipping. You feel like brain fog lifts. So that kind of like gets you hooked on it, and you understand that that's our natural state. But I still was struggling with sugar and addiction and binge eating. And that's because you can have all of the keto treats and sweets, and the addiction is still there. And so yeah, from there, I understood just how powerful it was for weight loss, the low fat, the low carb approach. But from there, every time I would have, let's say, a binge eating episode, and I'd be like feeling really down on myself, I'd be watching a Joe Rogan podcast where he'd be interviewing Michaela Peterson or Jordan or Sean Paker, or and I'm like, well, this is insane, an all meat diet. And then I read the book by Dr. Stephen Gundry, The Plant Paradox, which talked about all the science on plant toxins. Why was I never taught that? And from there, I kind of started dipping my toes into carnivore diets. And at the beginning, I still, again, addiction, still kept the honey and the sweet potatoes and stuff. But like very quickly, you can see how it's hard to control the amounts of those foods. And then eventually realize, like, no, it's got to be zero carb, zero sweets. That's a long story short.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I think that's you've hit on something that's bothered me for a long time, which is the fruit and honey thing, because I have a few of my diabetic patients outside of this coaching. I do sort of diabetic and obesity practice, and because there's a few influencers out there saying it's fine, they're forgetting the addiction side of things. It's fine if you can moderate, or if you're surfing for 3 hours a day and burning up lots of glycogen. But things like fruit and honey can be really problematic. I mean, is that something you're experiencing then with your clients, that they're seeing that being pushed?
Yeah, everybody. And it's so funny. Everybody starts off with like, maybe I can keep those in for a little period of time. And it's like, you could moderate your intake in periods of really high motivation. You can moderate your intake a little bit, but very quickly, the addictive components start to grab a hold of you. It's very quickly that it goes from a little bit of moderation to just way too much artificial sweeteners, right? Or whatever it is, honey or whatever. It seems like, yeah, all of my clients eventually go on a zero sweetener, zero carbohydrate diet, and that it just works. It works a lot better. It's just so much easier. And I know that people, first of all, they think of a carnivore diet, zero carbs, zero sweetener. It's like, I can't do it. It appears to be so restrictive, but the truth is it feels so freeing. It's a lot freer than consistently than trying to keep in a little bit of cocaine or a little bit of heroin, and then trying to not binge on that. I actually was reading two studies 2 nights ago. I'm preparing this research for my YouTube channel about rats that were given saccharin, which is a fake sugar, and heroin. And in both studies, the rats consistently preferred the saccharin and the sweet taste over heroin. And it wasn't just a little bit more preference, it was a lot more preference for the saccharin. So, I think everybody probably by now knows the studies on that, the fact that rats prefer sugar over cocaine, but they even prefer it much, much more than heroin. Isn't that insane?
Yeah, it is. And I think I've seen some functional MRIs where they look at the lighting up of the brain, and sugar lights it up more than anything, which is interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, more areas in your brain light up, at least in the rodents' brains light up with sugar than with hard drugs like cocaine or heroin. It's just insanity. And I know people are going to say, oh, but those are rat studies. It doesn't translate to humans. First of all, look around you. Look at the obesity epidemic, number one. Second of all, look at the brain scans that we have of people who are obese, and look at their brains and how similar they are to the brain scans of drug addicts. It's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things, sorry to do a little humorous aside, but you'll get this as a personal trainer. Whenever I look at studies that are about exercise, it's always about running and endurance. And it's never about weight training, and that's because you can't get a rat to bench press. So
Right.
all they can do is put it in a wheel and see what happens. Anyway, so your skin, I'm assuming, and do you feel that that's the issues, or do you feel you've still got a bit of way to go?
My skin is, I would say, 90% better. I'm not on any drug. The only reason I say 90% is because I still have cheese. I know I need to stop. I get it. I will, I promise. But I guess it doesn't bother me to that level anymore, because I don't even have to. I used to have to put on makeup to be able to leave the house, and now I don't need to do that anymore, So, maybe 95% better. And I know I can achieve like 100%, but yeah, the dairy has definitely got to go, because I can tell when I overdo it with the dairy, because there are episodes where like I go ham on the dairy. That's again another addictive thing, It's not as addictive as sugar, but it's definitely addictive.
Yes, and troublesome for many people. I find that dairy can stall fat loss and actually trigger the sugar cravings back, I suppose, because of the lactose. I want to ask you a couple of things, a couple of practicalities, because people will always message if I don't. So what does your day or your week of eating look like?
Yeah, so I do have a lot of YouTube videos on that, where I like have the videos of what I'm eating during a day, but it's the same basically, eggs and beef. That's pretty much it. I'll alternate between ground beef. I like to do 80% lean ground beef. And sometimes I'll do ribeyes. I'll go like a whole week with just ribeyes. I like ribeyes a lot. Yeah, it's just, ground beef, ribeyes. I really don't do much chicken, if at all, or turkey. It's just too lean. And if that's the only thing you're eating, you need energy. So you got to get some fat from somewhere, which is why I prefer meat. I'll do eggs. I'll have, let's say, a ribeye with some eggs, or ground beef with some eggs. And I'll have some sour cream sometimes, like ground beef and sour cream, or let's say, ground beef and cheese on top. But I try not to do the cheese too much, Just yesterday I bought a bag. It wasn't a good choice, but I did it. So yeah, there's not much that. Sometimes I get salmon too.
Lovely. What about drinks? What do you drink?
Water, that is it. I used to do a lot of artificially sweetened, I would do like element packs that are artificially sweetened, or I would do Gatorade. There was a time where I would do like the 0 sugar Gatorade, and it's just so quick for me to escalate how much I'm drinking. And I'm like, this is a problem. I can't. And so it's been a few months where I'm like, no artificial sweeteners. I used to keep in some Quest bars, and then that's out too, obviously. After one day where I had 4 Quest bars in a day, I'm like, okay, that's it. That's gotta go. Can't keep the sweet stuff anymore. It's as much as we know how addictive it is, it's almost as if we don't believe the research. And we are like the professionals, the experts. We're the ones who are supposed to believe the research first and foremost. So like, if we're having a hard time fully absorbing the fact that sugar is more addictive than cocaine and heroin, what chance does the rest of the population have?
Yes.
Because when you truly accept it, you're not going to be so casual about it. You're not going to have the 0 sugar Gatorade. You're not going to have the Quest bar if you truly believe that sugar is more addictive than heroin, right? And you wouldn't keep it in your house. And most people do keep that. And even though they're familiar with the studies, but we're still very casual in our approach. That's for sure.
Yes, I agree. And I think when I'm coaching and someone has no experience, they've not done paleo, keto, low carb or anything, I get them to take out the big culprits first and just do that slow transition. And it's remarkable. Just 6 weeks of no bread, no potatoes, no sugar in your tea or something can make a huge difference. I've actually just spoken to someone that couldn't believe the difference in just 6 weeks, taking out those major culprits. And then, as you say, even coaches like ourselves, there are moments where you eat something or you drink something and you think, that's stupid, that's a mistake. But that's life. We're humans, and I don't expect perfection from my clients, but I expect it from me. But I trip up every so often. I see something and think, that can't be that bad, and then before you know it, I'm eating way too much cheese.
It's so easy. Yeah, exactly. I get it.
So yeah, final bit on the practicalities of your day. So do you do OMAD or TAD?
So no, not recently. I've done OMAD for a while. I don't do that anymore. I do TUMAD,
Yeah.
definitely. Just, yeah, two meals, breakfast, and then like a late breakfast and then a late lunch, early dinner.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I want to, as I'm an advanced personal trainer, as you are, I do want to talk about eating and fitting it in with working out. Do you have any particular tips? For instance, I'm always undoing the I need a pre-workout shake, post-workout shake. I get that a lot, and that's something I don't think is needed. How do you approach training for yourself and working? Do you do anything, and what do you advise other people to do?
Yeah, so I do what I generally recommend also everybody does, which is make sure you have a weightlifting program at least 4 to 5 times a week. Go to the gym, lift heavy weights, use a really heavy weight that you can lift 12 times. And if you attempt to lift it the 13th time you fail, that would be the appropriate weight to use for those major muscle groups. You want to target, your chest, your back, your shoulders, your core muscles, your glutes, your hamstrings, your quadriceps. Those are your major muscle groups. So try to focus also on compound exercises like a squat or a deadlift or, a chest fly, lateral raises for your shoulders, the, lat pull down for your back. Those are going to work more than one joint at a time, and it's a more of functional movement that lowers the chance of or the risk of injury. So make sure you do at least 3 to 4 sets of 12 repetitions per major muscle group. And you can alternate, let's say on a Monday, you do upper body, on a Tuesday, lower body, Wednesday, upper body, Thursday, lower body. And then you can take a day off on Friday, and then Saturday, you can do a full body thing, Sunday off, and then you go back. Those are 5 workout sessions in a week, and you've met all the criteria for a good strength training program. But you don't want to forget about cardio, because the strength training is great. It's going to target every major muscle group. It's not going to be able to reach the heart muscle. For that, we need to do cardio. And so you need to do things like running, sprints. I generally prefer you focus on a higher intensity than doing, trying to train for like a marathon. So focus on, if you're fit enough, you can do 20 minutes vigorous intensity cardio on 3 times a week. Or if you're a beginner, you can do moderate intensity cardio 5 days a week for 30 minutes per session. And there you have it. That's what I do. And that's what I would recommend most people also do.
But what about eating? Do you tell people to do it fasted, or eat before, or eat within an hour afterwards?
So I think the fasting generally comes naturally when your metabolic health has been fixed. So you do that by removing the carbs. The moment you start removing the carbs, it's fascinating how you wake up and you're not really that hungry in the morning, right? Now, if somebody is super lean and metabolically healthy and they wake up and they're hungry, I don't think you should force yourself to fast. Unless you have, some anti-aging goals, that's different. But for the most part, I think it comes naturally. And I think the worst thing that people can do is continue to eat the carbs and then just force themselves to fast. I used to get this question a lot because people feel like, okay, I don't want to let go of the rice and the cookies and stuff that I enjoy eating. What if I just force myself to fast, but then in the feeding period, I can still consume those foods? And it's like, no. I wouldn't recommend that. You're going to stress your body, you're going to stress your adrenal glands. And over time, that's not going to yield, you're just going to have a much weaker adrenal gland system, which means your overall energy in the future is just going to be much lower. So I wouldn't recommend that.
Cool. And do you have any views on sort of the macro splits? Do people that train need more protein, or are you an advocate of high fat? What's your position?
I do think we naturally, like when you're only eating meats, you're naturally going to want to go a little bit higher fat. So I think you'll naturally go at around like 60, 70, maybe even 80% fat, the rest in protein. I think the only thing with macros is try not to go too lean with the meat, because if you take out the carbs and you take out the fat, you've got to run on some sort of fuel. You could soldier on, but you don't want to do lean meat for too long, that you can end up with something called rabid starvation, which could literally be fatal. And you're going to feel miserable in the process. And it doesn't take that long. It takes a few weeks for rapid starvation to set in. If, let's say, somebody's only eating chicken breast, like that's the worst thing you can do. Now, if you're doing beef and you're going very lean on the beef, you're eating nothing but lean beef, that could also not feel very good. And there's really no reason to go that lean. You can still drop body fat, you can still have satiety, all those things, by going a little bit higher on the fat. So my main thing is stop being afraid of the fat, because a lot of people will go carnivore, but they're still kind of a little bit hesitant to increase their fat intake. And I get it. Even I sometimes feel this way. It's like, is this too much fat? And, you know, I just have to like snap out of it, because we've been brainwashed for far too long. And you and I probably even more so, just when you're in the system and you're being, you know, taught to all of this low fat BS for so long, it's hard to break out of that. So I get it.
Yes, and I'll ask you actually about fish, because you didn't mention much fish there, but I think looking at your Instagram, you are an advocate of eating fatty fish, and you talk about omega-3s a bit. So can you tell me a bit about that?
So I do salmon. It's got the omega-3s. I'm not convinced that if you're not doing salmon, there are a lot of carnivores that are not doing seafood, not doing fish, and they're just perfectly fine for decades. I'm not convinced our needs for omega-3 are the same on a carnivore diet. The truth is, we don't know for sure any of the stuff. Nobody has bothered to study a carnivore diet recently, right? Or in the, you know, in the modern era. So it seems like you might not need to supplement. It seems like you might just be healthy, but, you know, until we have better data, I can't tell you I am 1000% convinced like you don't need to add in some seafood or some omega-3s. Although I know that I don't go out of my way to make sure, oh, I have to have salmon this week. Like sometimes it'll be months before I'll get a salmon. I'll just get it because I miss it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
yeah.
I noticed in one of your answers you touched on longevity. So is that one of the things that you focus on?
Oh yes, absolutely. I talk a lot about anti-aging actually on my YouTube channel. Um, I I don't want to die. And I think there's a lot of research that shows that we have a lot more control over the aging process than we used to think. And I think the reason why there's not as much, well, there is a lot of progress in anti-aging research, but I think it could be so much more if just people overall stop thinking of dying as a natural occurrence. Like everybody's going to die. That's just the way that it is. And if more people accepted that aging is a chronic disease and we can actually reverse it, because we've reversed it in rats, we can do it like that, easy, no problem, right? So if we as a society can change our perception towards aging and reframing it away from this natural inevitability to a chronic disease that we can reverse if we choose to, then there would be more funds allocated and more excitement allocated towards that. And then if we spend more time and effort researching it, we'll get the answers quicker. Because even in humans, we're seeing reversals, we're seeing all kinds of treatments that are showing just incredible results on several of the hallmarks of aging. And so that's why I like to always mention that and just encourage people to read up on it. It's just mind-blowing how much advancement and how much progress and how much control we actually have over the aging process. And aging is the root cause of all chronic diseases. That's why you don't have a heart attack at 20. You have it in your 80s. Aging, you know, is the root cause of all of those things. So instead of trying to target every single chronic disease, whether it's Alzheimer's or, you know, diabetes or heart disease, let's look at the root cause, which is aging, and try to prevent that.
What would be the things to absolutely avoid then to extend your life? Can you think of like 5 things that you could take out of your life that would definitely help?
The basics, obviously, you know, smoking, alcohol, all that kind of stuff. the environmental toxins, try to minimize those as much as possible, because they really speed up the aging process. They cloud your DNA when you get a lot of environmental toxins, and it becomes harder for your body to read your DNA properly to make the proper proteins from that. So try to live as clean as life as possible. Maybe look into chelation programs. I think everybody after a while has to undergo regular chelation programs, whereby you pull the heavy metals out of your body. There's a bunch of ways to do it, EDTA or DMSA supplements. You would have to check with a functional medicine doctor that would prescribe those things. But, you know, every day we're being exposed to a gazillion environmental toxins. And so it's a good idea to help the body excrete that. Saunas help also with that, but it might not be as drastic as also doing a chelation program every few years. So all those things you could do. The sedentary behavior is probably the worst. So, you know, exercise literally kills off certain cells called zombie cells that accumulate as we age, and that speed up the aging process even more. And so exercise literally targets directly one of the major hallmarks of aging. And so the harder you work out, the longer, the more you're going to kill off the accumulation of those zombie cells. So that's huge. Carbs lead to something called AGEs. I think the pun was intended. AGEs stands for advanced glycation end products. And those are the molecules that form from the carbs you eat, which is what? Sugar attaching to things it has no business attaching to. So now you have sugar getting attached to your blood vessels, your cellular membranes, your hormones, and the formation of those advanced glycation end products, or AGEs, also attached, by the way, to the collagen matrix, and leads to wrinkles and, you know, like the laxity in your skin and like the jowl, everything basically. You lose the collagenous matrix of your skin. And that leads to wrinkles. So all those things are driven strongly by the consumption of carbohydrates. So even your bowl of oatmeal is going to lead to the formation of AGEs, right? So there's no such thing as like, oh, it's a complex carbohydrate, it's healthier. No, that's all BS.
That used to be my breakfast of choice, porridge. We call it porridge in England, and skim milk and freshly squeezed orange juice. Boy, I everything wrong. Absolutely everything.
Yeah,
but I'm so glad
you don't
so
do that
glad.
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought you might mention seed oils, because again, looking at your Instagram, you've mentioned.
Yeah. I feel like, yeah, you're right. I should have. That's probably worse than the sugar. Seed oils, or engine lubricants that are in our, you know, diet as well, like canola oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, corn oil, soybean oil, grapeseed oil. All those things are probably the single worst ingredient you can put in your body. They're highly inflammatory. Just go to Google and look at how is canola oil made. Just watch that for 2 minutes, and then we'll see if you think that that is a healthy option. So those are definitely like probably the number one thing that you don't want to touch. I agree 100%. I feel like this is something like everybody knows. Like I take it for granted. I just skipped over it. But you're right. Yeah. It's probably worse than sugar.
I think it is something that everybody in this space knows, but I still feel there's many people that are not even aware that it's in everything. They're in everything. And
I know doctors who use it thinking that that's healthier, like yes. Medical doctors who use it thinking yes. that that's healthier. That they won't buy the butter, they'll get the margarine.
It's crazy.
Medical doctors, it's insane. If you open up a JAMA, a Journal of the American Medical Association, I like sometimes to like flip over it. Okay, so you'll have, let's say, a whole spread of how this certain alternative medicine protocol doesn't work. Like they're always bashing anything that does not require the sales of pharmaceutical drugs. They're bashing it all the time. You flip it over, then you have a full spread of a drug. And then you know it's like every other page, it's literally just all propaganda, it's all marketing. That's what the JAMA is. It's mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing. Now, I'm going to ask you about something I don't think you talk about much, and that's your views on dance, because I think you incorporate that in your protocol somewhere.
do. I love dancing a lot. I do it a lot. I do have some dance videos, some dance workout videos on my YouTube channel. I've always been a dancer. I've always taken, even back when I was in Lebanon, there's actually a very strong party slash dance scene in Lebanon. It's like that's something we're really good at, just partying. And so you remember being at all the salsa classes and all the salsa nights, and then, coming to Miami and continuing that. I did all of the Zumba certifications and became certified with all. I never taught, I never had the intention of teaching, but I was like, oh, this is great. And you could learn all those dance classes online. And then I realized, like, oh my God, YouTube has so many free dance classes, and some of them you can even move on and pay for it, but like, just if you start with just the free ones, it's insane how much better you'll get. Really professional dance classes. So yeah, that's something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm always planning on doing way more of those. There's so many things that I have like planned, but yeah, dance is definitely a big part of my life, and I think rhythm is primal. I think if you look, I remember reading an article by Dr. Lauren Cordain a few years ago, and it talked about the exercise protocol of hunter-gatherers. And I remember that I was struck by that every other night they would have a bonfire and they would like dance till like the early hours of the morning. So rhythm is in our DNA, and I feel like moving away from that creates some sort of deficiency in us that probably increases our chances of getting addicted to certain behaviors.
Yeah, I mean, I just think enjoying yourself is something, it's underrated. I really do. I just feel that going out and looking at the sunrise or having a good dance is something that's so good for your mental health and just has a knock-on effect. So I can't let you go without talking about something that's close to my heart, as we're both into the exercise. Oh, no, it's nothing bad.
Okay.
It's something I've proved quite a few times using body composition and DEXA scans and everything, because there is a big myth out there that you can't gain muscle while you're losing fat, even though I've now done this in about 5 experiments and I'm currently going to do it again. I mean, what do you think about that? Is it possible to gain muscle while losing fat?
1000%. And especially if you're eating a carnivore diet, it's an anabolic diet. It's all it is protein. All it is sending messages to your body to grow muscle. Here's the thing. If you're not training hard enough, yeah, it's going to be hard to put on muscle. It's generally hard to put on muscle. You really have to apply yourself, right? It's not the easiest thing to do. Now, the thing is, when you're losing weight, especially if you're doing it in an unhealthy fashion, let's say those low fat, high carb, kinds of diets where you're just restricting calories, you're going to feel generally fatigued. You won't have as much energy. And so if you don't have as much energy, you're going to struggle to apply yourself to lift as heavy as you should be heavy lifting. And so that means that the signal sent to your muscles to create more muscle is going to be weak. So that weak signal won't lead to, more muscle building. So that's generally what happens. But especially if you're a beginner, it's so easy to do both at the same time, right? The more of a novice you are, the more easily it is for you to build muscles very quickly. Also, muscle memory is a thing. If you've lifted for a long period of time and then you stopped for a while, maybe even you stopped for a year or two, and then you go back to lifting, you're going to progress a lot quicker than somebody without that muscle memory. Now, everybody, once you reach a certain level of lifting, eventually it's going to be harder and harder to see changes. That's just the way that everything, I think, in life is you get the newbie gains quicker. And then as you become more of a professional, you have to probably work so hard for a whole year to add 2 to 3 pounds of muscle. So people kind of try and interpret that as like you can't do both, and that's just not true. You absolutely can. I've done it. My clients do it all the time. It's totally doable.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think, I did this last year. So when age is brought up, I'm 58. So I did it. at 58. So age is not an excuse. And I'm saying that not to you, but I'm saying that to everybody that's listening. So Sarah, I want to thank you. That's been an absolute pleasure. I wish we'd done this sooner, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Do you have any parting shots? By the way, you mentioned your YouTube channel a few times. I will put a link in the description and I'll flash it up on the screen a few times as well, so people can see you dancing and see everything that you.
Oh boy. Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephen. It's been a pleasure. I cannot believe I haven't met you earlier, but now we finally have connected, and I'm just so happy that we have an ally all the way in the UK. Hopefully you'll come visit us, or we'll go visit you and we'll meet in person. And yeah, people can find me on Instagram at dr.sarah.zaldivar and YouTube Dr. Sarah Zaldivar. I'm everywhere. I do have also, like, you know, the LinkedIn, the TikTok, the Twitter, the Pinterest. It's too much to work on all of them at the same time. My main focus, I would say, is YouTube and Instagram, and my website, www.drsarahzaldivar.com, which is where people can find my coaching packages.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much, Dr. Zaldivar. And for those that want to stick around to the end, at the end of this, there will be the bloopers where I made a complete train wreck of the introduction. Anyway, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, and I meant to say, I always start with the broadest question is, what made you go carnivore? And you answer however you want. All right, okay, so here we go. Right. Hi there, and welcome to another success story. I've got Dr. Sarah Zaldivar. No, that's not right.
You butchered that name like no other.
I didn't. Because I was talking to right.
That's okay.
Zaldivar.
It's so funny. My maiden name, I'm originally from Lebanon. My maiden name is Adwan, right? And then when I got married to my hubby, I was like, I like his last name. I'm gonna take it. I like Zaldivar. And I'm thinking, oh, it's gonna be easier for people to pronounce. And it was the complete opposite. Yeah, everybody struggles with it.
I'm gonna do that again. But I might put it on the end as an outtake. So
you can keep it. This is funny. It's fine.
No, I'll do another one just in case.
Okay.
Thank you for watching the video. That's really much appreciated. And I've now selected one of these videos for you, which is one of my more popular videos. And there's also one here that you might find interesting. The other thing you can do is smash me in the face if you want to subscribe.